What's going on, everybody? It is me, the one and only Dr. Brandon W. Jones, your Chief Village Building Strategist, and I'm so excited to have you here for episode number 35. 35, episode 35 of the Building the Village podcast. Man, it's a lot of work to be in this podcast space. I know a lot of people are like, man, podcasting is overrated, or a podcast, the market is saturated, and all of those comments are just that, comments. I do this because I love it. I do this because I feel like what the Building the Village podcast is designed to do is going to accomplish just that. And so if you're out there and you've been rocking with me since episode 1, thank you for doing that. Keep up the great work. I love you and I appreciate you. If you just started last week or today, thank you. Wherever you found yourself joining in on the Building the Village journey, I'm excited just to have you as part of the family, and I hope that we can continue to build and grow together. And as always, if you like the content of the episode, please don't hesitate to like, to comment, to subscribe, and share. And also give me feedback on the episode. If you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment, you can like, you can subscribe, and you can share. If you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, please, 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 friends, go ahead and share the love, because that's how stuff like this gets out there. It's because you like it, you comment on it, you subscribe to it, and therefore the algorithms on various platforms promote it and push it into the spaces that it needs to be. With all of that being said, again, thank you. I want to dive into our content for today, and it's a topic that strikes at the heart of every professional journey, and that is the difference between networking and building actual connections. I want to start with kind of giving an overview of why, well, not necessarily an overview, but really just trying to highlight what got me here to this episode. So I was having a conversation with a colleague, and one of the things they mentioned to me was that they were like, man, I hate networking. And a lot of people hate networking. Now, as an extrovert, I kind of struggle with that because I like people. I like talking to people. I like being around them. And so networking, it just doesn't strike me as a thing that I have to work to do. And so I have to put myself in a bit of a different headspace to get an understanding of the folks in my village who are who need a little bit of assistance and a little nudge when it comes to networking. But the reality is that networking is exactly like what it sounds like. It's literally this business activity where entrepreneurs or business people meet to form these business relationships, to recognize, create, or act on these business opportunities where they share information with each other and they look for potential partnerships for their various activities and ventures, so on and so forth. For those of you who hate networking, that definition alone makes you go, see, that's why I don't like doing it, right? Some of those common activities that are associated with networking typically are like attending events or exchanging business cards or connecting on LinkedIn or shooting a email to connect over coffee, or to to network over coffee or something like that. And usually the goals when someone's networking is to expand their, I don't know, their contact list, if people still call it that, find a job lead, promote their business, or see how their business interests align. And so it's very transactional. Networking is very transactional. It's, I'm trying to get exposure for my business, and you are somebody that I was told I need to network with or talk to. And for some people, that's overwhelming. For some people, that's boring. For some people, it's stressful. Wherever you find yourself, I want us to focus on doing one thing and one thing only. I want us to focus on how do we go about, not how do we go about, I want everybody to stop networking, and I want people to actually start connecting. You've heard me say this for a couple of episodes now, that people are already struggling to build connections. People are already struggling to have conversations or have meaningful interactions with each other. And as a result, people find themselves in isolation, not necessarily wanting to talk to each other, not wanting to get out. And as a result, when there's this networking thing that they have to do as a result of the conference they're attending or because of their job, they get overwhelmed or their social batteries run out sooner rather than later. And I want people to get out of the networking space. And I really want people to start building genuine, and I mean genuine connections. Here's what I mean. I want people to develop, by definition, that word connection, those deep, meaningful relationships that are based on mutual respect, trust, and or shared values. The common activities that you might find when someone's trying to build connections is having in-depth conversations, supporting each other beyond business needs, maintaining consistent communication. You're not going to want to do that with all 34 people whose business cards you took at that conference. But with connections, you'll want to call those two or three or even that one person who you had that in-depth conversation with, where you made a connection, you felt a connection, you found a way that, man, I might be able to support this person beyond business needs in a good way, and maintaining consistent communication. Now, the goal of a connection differs from the goal of networking, because in networking we're trying to do something super transactional, expanding that contact list, find the job lead or whatever I said earlier, right? But with building a connection, we're trying to establish mutual growth, personal and professional support, long lasting relationships. See, those are the things that would get somebody out of the bed in the morning, knowing that I'm about to go and meet with someone that I have a connection with. I get to go and sit down and have coffee with this person that, man, we're connected. We've got these shared values, right? We've got these shared interests. That's something that gets people excited. Now, here are the pitfalls though with networking, right? Because if we keep going down this networking rabbit hole, number one, we keep winding up with these superficial interactions, right? Networking, if we're not careful, can really lead to these inherently shallow interactions, right? The old speed networking model where the focus is more on quantity than quality. And the consequences of those interactions are a lack of follow up, limited trust and loyalty, right? High turnover of contacts. And it's then the second downfall of a traditional networking model is that it's just transactional. It feels like it's a business transaction. I'm meeting someone for the sole purpose of getting the job lead. The consequence of that, the relationship dissolves once that transaction is completed, and there's really no genuine engagement. And then somebody could walk away feeling like all they did was just used me. They wanted to get in the know on, how to get hired at my company, but since they got hired, they never called me back. Or they wanted to quote unquote pick my brain, where, usually when I'm consulting, I charge people a nominal fee for picking my brain, but I did it for free for them. And then once they got what they needed, they didn't respond to me anymore. They didn't call. They didn't invite me out for coffee. They didn't attend the happy hour with me at the conference when I ran into them. That can feel a little cold, right? Now, if we focus on building genuine relationships, well, number one, guess what the benefit is? You get deep relationships. You get an actual support system out of it, right? That's where mentoring comes from. That's where those long-term collaborations can come from. And the benefits of that is that you get the emotional and professional support, you get trusted advice. You might even get an advocate out of it. See, advocates talk about you when you're in a good way, whether you're in the room or not. They advocate for you to be the person to get that job lead, or hey, you get that promotion. They're speaking your name favorably whether you're there or not. That's what an advocate will do for you. I probably should have saved that for a podcast episode, the difference between a mentor and an advocate. Well, there you have it, right? The second benefit I would say that comes from building actual connections is mutual growth. Everybody benefits because genuine connections lead to mutual success. That means we might be able to collaborate on a long term project. We might get to share opportunities with each other. We get win win situations. We get collective success, shared knowledge, and resources. Um, that sounds like a village. Building the village, not just the podcast, but the concept of it takes a village is literally a community that is built on connections, whether they be professional, personal, or whatever. They're built on connections, not built on transactions. A network is built on transactions. Connections are built on shared knowledge and resources. That's where the village comes from with that. And so, how do we go about moving? How do we transition from being a networker to being somebody that builds connections? Number one, please be authentic. And that sounds exactly like what I just said. Be authentic, be your real self. If I have to fake who I am, we are networking. If I can be the real me, we're building connections. Can I just pause for a second and say that's one of the reasons why I don't get caught up in the whole viewership and over promotion of what I'm doing with the podcast? Because for me, I'm all about building the village. It's a slow process, and this content is going to be there, right? And so for me, I want to do this the way that I'm doing it. I want to record when I record. I want to put content out there when I want to put content out there. And I want to connect with the people who want to connect with me. And I'm not for everybody. And as I'm getting older, I'm slowly becoming more and more comfortable with that concept. But be authentic. It's very important to be authentic when you're transitioning out of the networking space and moving into the connecting space. You want to share your true self. Be transparent. Vulnerability, as Tim Ross would say, is a superpower. Use that superpower, right? And show actual interest in other people. It's very important that you do that. You can't just be yourself and make it the you show. You actually have to show genuine interest in other people. Hey, tell me a little bit more about that project you were working on. I'm really interested in that. I was reading your white paper on Dove soap or whatever the case may be. Wasn't trying to do brand placement there, I promise y'all. But whatever the case may be, show genuine interest in people. Now, here's the other part. You need to listen more than you actually speak. I tell my students at the church all the time, you have two ears, you have two eyes, and you have one mouth. That means you should observe and listen more than you speak. Because if I'm asking open-ended questions, which is another strategy, and I'm listening and taking a genuine interest in other people, that's how connections are built. Because people like talking about themselves. Make people feel like they matter when you're in your presence. That's for free there. Here's the other part. You got to invest time and effort if you're going to move from networking to building connections. You got to invest time and effort. Relationships need nurturing. My pastor says this, and he got this quote from Gary Smalley, and it says this. It says, life is relationships. The rest is just details. Life is relationships. The rest is just details. And so relationships need nurturing. That means you got to regularly check in. That's why the networking model, you can get 1,000 business cards, but how many of them are you actually going to follow up with? Versus when you've made connections, see that's a smaller number, and it makes it a little bit easier to do regular and consistent check-ins, offering to help with something without expecting anything in return. That's how connections are built. Follow up after that meeting. Celebrate wins and milestones together. Relationships take time to build. It's not going to happen overnight. But when we're building those connections, we're building our village, one villager at a time. Here's the last thing. You want to find common ground. Find common ground. Now, I know that we shouldn't only seek what we have in common, and rather, I would say that finding common ground really helps us build connections because we always have that thing that we fall back on. We have a shared value, we have shared interests. And so when we build those connections, I can follow back up with, "Hey, hey, are you going to the baseball game this weekend? I know that we share the interest in our local team or whatever." Or, "Hey, I noticed that your organization really values X, Y, or Z. I do too. I would love it if we could collaborate on some community service projects or some product launches or whatever, because I think we can both win something from that, right?" Another way to do this is participating in community activities, joining groups with shared passions. On episode 34, you heard me talk about actually doing the research and doing your homework and finding wherever you're planted those things that are interesting to you, going and being a part of those groups and seeing if this person that you're building connections with has a similar interest. And so what that will do is that'll put you in position to really make some lasting relationships and really building your village one villager at a time. Um, One of the things that I would encourage you to also do, as you're trying to navigate you're going to build connections, is read. There's lots of books out there. Never Eat Alone, The Art of People, uh, the list goes on, right? And I would just say that, there may be some other websites and resources that exist, but this podcast is definitely a great resource on how to play your part in the village and how to build your own. What about you? What are some helpful strategies that you have that can help folks in the village move from networking to building connections? I'd love to hear from you about that. Feel free to comment in the comment section. You can share your insight and wisdom on social media. I'm at B Jones Speaks on Instagram, X, aka Twitter, and also on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. Remember this, with this one closing thought. Remember this: building a village is not about the number of people you know, but the depth of your connections. So go out there and start building genuine relationships that are going to stand the test of time. Love y'all. Take care, and we'll talk to you again soon. Peace.